So the last question is, today marks 200 days since Jagtar Singh Johal was detained by Punjab police. He's a British citizen, and since then he's been denied private consular access, he's been denied an independent medical examination. There has been a bilateral between the Prime Ministers of the UK and India in that time. There have been ministerial visits to India in that time, and there has also been the visit of the head of the diplomatic service, the Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, not just to India but to Punjab in that time. And in this context, with all of this in mind, does this situation, does this scenario illustrate the limitations of the UK political system in helping on certain Sikh issues? Inderjeet Singh.
Thanks. I think it does. What it demonstrates to me is we've got UK PLC's interests first and foremost. Mother of all parliaments, the oldest democracy. We have the oldest bureaucracy that supports it. It's very slick bureaucracy, and 84 inquiry was a clear example of that. Despite the politicians, they get in the way if you're a civil servant. We have, I repeat again, we have no representation at the top table, whether it's the political arena or whether it's the bureaucratic civil service arena. We have nobody at the top table. Neither do I see any signs of our community getting there at the minute. Jaggi's case, sadly, is not the only one. Nazreen Zaghari Ratcliffe, she was imprisoned in Iran for 5 years, who has a 2-year-old daughter. She's become a political football between this country and Iran. It's frozen assets, now Trump's new set of sanctions again on Iran. So if you just contrast that with how the UK government would respond to a case like Jaggi's, when you've got a track record of 1984 papers at the National Archives, what happened with that inquiry? Pamma's case most recently in Portugal, where the community had to step up to the plate and actually deal with it. I think what won it for us wasn't the government. It was Jeremy Corbyn's letter to a socialist prime minister of Portugal. That's what won us, Pamma back to this country. Jaggi, in my view, and those of Sangats who I've spoken to, is it also sends out a message to the younger generation in this country, in particular, don't meddle in our domestic affairs in India, in particular in Punjab. This is what will do to you, okay? Parents are spoken to at the Gurdwara and outside are saying, "Munde saade kudiyan joan di lod nahi hai. Go to Goa, go to Kerala, but don't go to Punjab." Okay? The third thing I would say on that is the Charu party. A lot of our diaspora from this country went and supported that new vision, that new political scene in India at the last elections in Punjab. And that also has repercussions for the communities living outside of India. It wasn't just the UK Sikhs who went, it was a wider participation. And obviously the guy who won didn't like that particularly. And this is perhaps a warning shot to the so-called NRIs that don't meddle in our political affairs at home. Then I come back to this credible institution thing again. We can bang our drum as loud as we can, but unless we've got an institution behind us who can hold these politicians to account, we're not going to get very far. We have very weak infrastructure, and we need to strengthen it, whether it's Sikhs for Labour, whether it's, I have no view on the Sikh Tories. I have no view on that. And Jay Singh Sohal has offered me to talk to me about it outside, which I welcome. I'm learning as a Sikh all the time, and I want to sort of move forward by saying that we also need leadership. The Jaggi leadership, from what I'm getting from the community, is top-down leadership. The grassroots are not involved. We need to look at that. We need to rethink that, because there's a tendency amongst some of those people to think we know it all. We'll get there our own way. I think that's a misunderstanding. We need to learn from the Pamma case, where the whole community, the Kesri Leher movement in this country, where the whole community came together and there was a huge impact on a national political scene.
Yes, this is deplorable, and it's not unexpected that we are dealing with a country that does not put human rights to the forefront. And I've said this again and again. Only last week I spoke in a debate on the Commonwealth Conference and all the achievements. And I said, why is India not on the list of 30 countries that abuse human rights? And there was no answer. We have our diplomatic sources. I then added, could it be because India is an important trading partner? There was silence. That's what it is. In 1984, not with the release of the documents a few years ago, but actually in 1984, I went to see David Waddington about what was happening to Sikhs in India. He listened patiently and then said, Indrajit, we're walking on a tightrope. It's very difficult. We've already lost one important contract, the Westland helicopter contract. So it is difficult to do anything with this government. We have to keep, with all British governments, trade is important. And we have to keep plugging away determinedly. At the same time, we do not do ourselves or Jaggi any favours. I've made representations in the Lords and got rubbish replies back again, which I'm chasing again and again. But we don't do ourselves any favours by tearing down flags and making a nuisance of ourselves, because that gives the Indian government the opportunity to say to the British government, all those arguing for him are extremists and terrorists. So we've got to be careful.
Is there anybody else on the panel want to come back to that? Davinder, do you think?
So I think I will try and keep this short, because I think we could talk about, we're talking about a 31-year-old in prison who's a British citizen, and we shouldn't forget that. So I'm not going to try and make points about putting our own community down, but let's get very real. Britain has a way of doing things. And when it comes to India, it has a different way of doing things because it's seen as a former colonial power. That's the general line you will get from Britain and diplomats. We now know a bit about what happened in the 1980s, even before the 1984 attack, about we were really, as a community, irrelevant to government. And it could be any political party. This isn't a go at the Conservatives at the time. Any political party. But take Jagtar's case. The minister who's responsible said on 2 occasions in parliamentary debate they don't want to use, and he used the phrase, megaphone diplomacy. That's a way of saying, we're not going to tell you what we're doing it behind the scenes. And I say, just for a minute, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. So when Mark Field met Martin, Dr. Hughes and Gurpreet, his brother, for the first time, what did he say? We hope to get him out sooner rather than later. Now, we heard the Prime Minister within 16 days when she was asked about the BBC about Jagtar. She knew about Jagtar. She was briefed about Jagtar. The next day, we saw Rory Stewart saying it was unconstitutional and there should be extreme action taken against India. And we, as a community, said, right, let's hold them to that. The trouble is, they're dealing with India. It's a corrupt system. The Bamma case, the reality of the Bamma case was David Lidington, who's now the Deputy Prime Minister and was the Europe Minister, told John Speller, his MP, 4 weeks before the actual decision what was going to happen. This was done all behind the scenes, with lots of people contributing it, lots of politicians from different political parties contributing to it. But that was Portugal. This is India. And all I wanted to say is that take the case of the Chennai Sikhs. Talk to the woman who had to fight that case on her own. These were Brits. They had less political influence than we do as a community. Because on the 18th of April, Theresa May and Number 10 didn't have to tell the BBC they raised it with Narendra Modi, but they did, because they owed something back to the many Sikhs that wrote letters to their MPs. And then, only recently, when Mark Field was in India, on the 7th of May, he met the foreign minister. We got a letter last week saying he raised Jagtar's case again. They are telling us they are doing things. We still need to keep up our pressure, but we shouldn't forget, a lot of people, non-Sikhs, have said the community, and I say the community, I don't say organisation, the community has done a lot in this case, and the hashtag Free Jaggi campaign is a grassroots thing. It's about ordinary people saying, this could be me, this could be my son, this could be my brother. And actually, Jagtar should be seen as a hero here, that he's given us the opportunity to actually contribute in a campaign where actually we're changing the views of the UK government to start saying, because we've seen those comments, those handwritten comments that have gone to MPs that have said, keep up the pressure, because this allows us to actually raise human rights issues with India. So I think Jagtar's done a tremendous seva to us all, but we shouldn't forget, 200 days is a very long time, and the Indian system will put those 1,500 or 2,000 pages of charge sheet, but there's only 12 lines that relate to Jaggi. There's nothing about murder. It's about one brown envelope that he supposedly gave to somebody in France. That's all that's in there. And actually, his case wasn't heard today, but when it's heard, he could have the charges dropped. He's not been actually charged, charge sheet. He could be out on bail, but you can only do this if we keep up the pressure.
So somebody I want to bring in now is Benji over here, because of your sort of experience with Sikh Relief and the Sikh Organisation for Prisoners' Welfare. There's something that you know quite a bit about. Yeah. Should we be right to expect Britain to be doing much more in this case?
Yeah. You see, first of all, I just want to talk about what Sikh Relief and SRPW have done. So we work within the Indians' legal justice framework, and to date, we've released nearly over 200 Sikh political prisoners within their own system. So Sikh Relief has never relied on the UK or its officials or its MPs or its government to secure those releases, because when Balbir Singh, because this is, as sad as it is, we've seen cases like this day in, day out, and it's shocking that for me this is it's become a normal thing. And that's, you know, when Jaggi's case first came out, I probably didn't have the shock and horror that a lot of the Sangha did, because sadly this isn't the first case. This has been going on from the 80s through to 90s through to right now. When Balbir Singh, the founder of our charity, was arrested, he was tortured for 6 days and 6 nights. So it wasn't that he was tortured and then given a break and then they started the next day. It was literally all day, all night for 6 days. There was a massive lobby here. Balbir Singh himself, before his charge sheet dropped, wrote to the British High Commissioner in India outlining his torture, outlining his illegal detention, and nothing happened. So we're in where Jaggi is now. We talk about the 200 days, and you know, you can't even imagine what that 200 days is like. But you know, for Balbir Singh, it was 2 years before he got to the point where there's a like a legal terminology that I wanted to use, which is called framing of the charges. So your charge sheet drops first, so you know what charges you are facing. Then your defense and your prosecution lawyers go through this process called framing of the charges, where they will argue to and fro that this charge is not right, this one should be taken away. The prosecution will then argue its case, saying, no, well, this one's valid, this is the evidence that we haven't even got to there yet. Until we get to there, we don't get to a trial. And Balbir Singh had to wait 2 years before that even got to the framing of the charges, which has to take place before a trial takes place. Davinder Singh Bullard was extradited from Germany back to India. He waited years before a charge sheet was even presented. This has been going on for decades, and the system is broken, it is corrupt, and it serves the same for anyone who has no political, financial clout in India. It's a system that is fundamentally broken. And then you have cases like Bal Singh France. He was a French national, French citizen. that has spent the last 10 years was tortured so badly that his torture sites have actually developed into cancer. His associate, Kulwant Singh, was tortured to the point where pencils were stabbed in his ears, and before his case went to court and it was going to fall in his favour, he was set alight and burnt on fire. Then you have a recent British national who is still in India. He's out on bail now, but he spent the last 7 years. This is Jaswinder Singh from Sunderland. So this is a British national, has been in India for 7 years, has been in jail, is currently out on bail, but he cannot come back to this country until the case is completed. And in India, it's such a clunky, broken system. You can have a court hearing. If one person from that entire system does not turn up that day, they will postpone the whole thing. A judge doesn't show up, it's cancelled. A clerk doesn't show up, it's cancelled. And these are the delay tactics that are used. It's not new. It's something that's gone on for the last 30 years. And we have to work through that. And the higher the profile of the prisoner, the more of an impact that they want to make. And it is disgusting. It's absolutely vile. Another case, I wanted to highlight these certain cases because now we have a case that actually mirrors Jaggi's case, but instead of being a UK citizen, he was from Dubai. So a Singh called Mitta Singh he's currently confined in Nabha jail, was a Dubai national, went to India to get married, got married, was arrested, detained, tortured, and it was all to do with social media allegations. So our team's been trying to secure bail for him. But when it came to his hearing, the prosecution brought 10 prosecution lawyers to that case to try and nail that man. Jagtar Singh Hawara never had 10 prosecutions at any of the 36 charges that he's had registered against him. You are fighting a fundamentally corrupt system, yet we fight it. But the time frame in which you are looking to fight these things can stem into years, and that is nothing new. This is what we've been up against. Some prisoners, we had Major Singh, who's been in prison since he was 16, came out at 35. You know, UAPA, the charges that are being levelled towards Jaggi, it's what's replaced TADA basically, and TADA was actually scrapped under the human rights. Massive concerns were raised about the violation of human rights under TADA. UAPA basically replaces that and pretties up basically TADA. So if you want to basically screw someone over, that's what you put on them. And now they're having this opportunity to make a bigger and longer case. So the point I want to try and make is that as awful as it is, as unjust as it is, as unconstitutional as it is, this is the system that you are working against. And this is what you have to fight, and you have to be prepared to put in. This isn't going to be a weeks and a months thing, and it's really sad. This could potentially go on for years. And as an organisation, I'm just being very honest here, we've never had to, in any of the cases involving any international, like all the cases that I've mentioned are where the Sikh political prisoner has come from outside of India. We've never had the need, or never had been facilitated by the external governments, because Balbir Singh himself was the perfect demonstration of how it just didn't work and didn't do anything. So, you know, you have to work within the legal framework of that country and fight it. That is how we've achieved the success. And I will call it a success, because when we started the charity, there were children who'd been imprisoned that had now gone into grown men, and their dariyan were chittiyan, yet when they went into jail, they didn't have a dari. So, you know, the successes are there, but you have to understand how the legal justice system works. And a detention of 200 days, some of our prisoners have gone through much, much longer than that. And you know, the bigger context of this is nothing new, and the pressure does need to keep going, does need to continue. But there is an underlying injustice in the way that whole system, and it's been brought up in multiple reports about how the system works and how unjust it is, not just towards Sikhs, but towards any minority in India. Do we need to look at how we work with other minority communities to form a minorities coalition on dealing with these things? But it has to be based more in India, with pressure coming from here.
Somebody I want to bring in now is Shamsher Singh, who is instrumental in the Free Jaggi Now campaign.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. All of you on the panel make really good politicians. And don't take that as a compliment, because I have no faith in politicians or the political establishment. I want to pick up on one thing that you said, Suki. I've heard a lot of stuff that I disagree with, but I just want to focus on one thing and keep it really brief. You said that we have to work through it, and you made a big statement about how unjust it is, and we've heard that about not only India, we've heard that about Britain. That, I mean, from the panel, we've talked about misogyny, we've talked about structural racism, we've talked about whiteness, we've talked about how we feel embarrassed. Any issue comes up in our community and it's taken in front of Gore, and we feel really embarrassed that Gore are knowing that we're arguing, despite all of you guys going to party political conferences and me watching the TV every day where these politicians shout at each other. And in a party political conference, these guys don't have one view, even amongst the Labour Party. This isn't an exceptional Sikh issue that Sikhs, for some reason, because we have a disagreement, we should feel embarrassed about it. I watch politicians like shout and scream and laugh at each other on Parliament, behave like children. I feel embarrassed for them. I don't feel embarrassed for me as a Sikh. But anyway, point aside, you said working within the Indian system, it's really corrupt, and SOPW. I don't like criticizing SOPW because it doesn't really go against, it goes really badly against me. It won't now because my dad was a trustee, as you guys know, one of the founding trustees of SOPW, who's passed away now. And I remember when we kind of had the meetings for SOPW at our house in the start, the vision was always to make sure that this is an organization that represents Sikhs politically in an environment of state oppression. And that's how we've always kind of engaged with politics, that we need Sikh political representation in a world where we've been marginalized, where we've been suffered genocide. The one issue that you guys have talked about, a Sikh political issue, a complex issue, is the issue of Jaggi. There's been no resolution from this government. We've seen, Lord Indrajit himself said 30 years ago he was sitting with some Gora dude in his house and he told him that we've already lost that contract. 30 years you've been working within that system, that you know the reality of that system, and you guys are telling us this system is racist and it doesn't work and it's flawed, but we have to keep going through it. So what you're talking about is perpetuating the status quo. You're talking about pushing us into a system like the example with SOPW. How many of those 200 prisoners have been released because they've been innocent? How many of them have been released because they've served their sentences and they've come out as guilty convicts that SOPW has then talked about rehabilitating into society as criminals? That's very far, that's very far from their role as Sikh political prisoners. They're waging war against India. They don't recognize Indian courts. They don't recognize the Indian justice system.
Fundamentally disagree with you. We have not only released prisoners who have completed their sentences, you say, we have released prisoners who had been sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, life imprisonment does not mean 10 or 20 years and then you apply for bail.
I know
life
what it means
until you die.
Yeah.
So we have released prisoners not who've completed their sentences. We've got people out who should have been in long before their time. Pal Singh was sentenced to 10 years. After 7 years, we got him out. Devinder Pal Singh Pullar, a lot of the high-profile lifers, we've managed to secure bail or get them out on some sort of release. Major Singh was a permanent release.
I understand
and that is a massive achievement when someone has been imprisoned for life, which means until you die.
I do understand that, but the point I'm trying to make is working within the system and having these prisoners released that are waging war against India. Anyway, that point aside,
would come in again there because a lot of these prisoners were not waging a war against India. Some were arrested because they were simply attending a protest.
Sorry
Major Singh was 16. He wasn't waging a war against India. He just attended a protest with his granddad.
I'll come to the point. I'll come to the point. This aside, the point I'm making is the underlying system, like you said, Tada was replaced by Uppa. Uppa's going to be replaced by POCA, whatever it's called, Prevention of Organized Crimes Activities Act, right? So the law is always changing, and we're told that the next political party, the next victory, the next involvement, the next thing is going to get us that one thing that we want, which is azadi or some kind of actual benefit to our community. But underlying the system does not change. The system is inherently racist, it's inherently oppressive. It only transforms itself so that, like yourselves tell us, that we have to just work harder, we have to behave really well, not shout and scream at each other, and maybe the next party will give us the justice that we're seeking.
Are you talking about Britain there specifically, or India, or both?
Just the nation state because India and Britain is pretty much the exact same thing, because India is a creation of Britain.
Can we focus on the British system?
The state's nature is fundamentally the same.
Shamsher Singh, thanks for your comments. I think I don't fundamentally disagree with anything you say, but what I would say is that If we're going to wait around, hang around to invent a system of our own, then we're going to be waiting a heck of a long time. That's all I'll say. I'll give you a demonstration of that with a real example. We put up, I think most of you will know Dr. Rai. He stood in Southall against, as an independent candidate, against Vrinder Sharma when Pyara Singh Khabra died in a by-election. You know how many votes he got? 200. Okay? And then we had a recent example of the snap election in Wolverhampton. Another candidate stood from the Sikh community as an independent. Again, we lost our deposit. So I say no more. There's a real example. So let's just wake up and deal with the realities of life. Yes, the system is racist. Yes, the system is not going to deliver to us on day one, but we need to challenge it. We are inqilabis. That's where we come from. That's our DNA. We fight injustice where we see it, regardless where it's coming from. I think we need to be true to our tenets of our faith, which is we need to be fair with people. We need to give them the time of the day. I don't believe in washing our dirty linen in public. I really don't, because we've got a bad enough PR as it is across the globe. We don't need any more of it. I think we need to just sort of calm down and deal with issues in a grown-up, mature way, which we are as a community. One final thing I would say is this. I didn't come into politics as a youngster by accident. It happened because I had a very strong grandfather who was involved in the Ghadar movement, if you remember that far back, which was part of the plan to get independence for India. He was based in East Africa, the East African chapter. Gopal Singh was his name, look him up. And the other chap was involved in trade union rights. The biggest trade union in Kenya, in East Africa, was the Sardar, was the General Secretary. Makhan Singh, look him up. Okay? We had, and my grandfather wasn't just a politician, he was a businessman. He was a professional photographer, ran his own business. He set up, with help of the community, 2 gurdwaras in Nairobi, in Kenya. We are multi-talented as a community. We can do many things. But however, in the UK, what I see is we are focused on one thing, a good life, a good car, a good home, a good wealth, a good business, and all of that. We forget about the meaty element of it in our communities. I think this is where we are falling down. Our brothers and sisters in Canada have done wonderfully well. They came behind us and they've surpassed us in terms of expectations. There's only this week, a Sikh has been in Malaysia, has become a minister in the government. A Sikh. We can do it. We can do it on our own, positivity. We have what we have is great wealth amongst us as a community. Talent is unreal. We need to tap it. We need to give it the sort of nurturing it needs. That's where I'm coming from. We've learned a great deal. We have the talent. We have the experience. Let's start sharing it.
Can I very quickly make a comment? That for once I agree with the other Inderjeet Singh. He talks in a lot of sense. There's a lot of sense there. It is, I'm a vice chair of the all-party parliamentary group on freedom of religion and belief. And believe me, it is not just Britain and India. India is a horrible example, and Britain is a greedy trading example. But this abuse of human rights goes on all around the world in worse circumstances than we've had today. We are Sikhs. The whole raison d'etre of being a Sikh is to fight this constantly in every way we can. That is what we should be doing all the time. Thank you.
Want to open it up to questions generally now. We're going to try and get as many in as possible.
Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so I will be quick. My name's Narendra. I work for a Conservative Member of Parliament. One of the problems we have is Sikhs don't see politics as an option or as a career. We've talked about influencing MPs, but the MPs, the ministers, they get their briefs from their advisors, and we don't ever look at who those advisors are. I work in Parliament, and the overwhelming majority of non-Gorde that work that are in catering, there's very few people that actually work there, that prepare the briefing documents that the MPs read, that the ministers read, that helps to inform their decisions. And Dawindadit touched on it earlier on as well in terms of party representation. When I got involved with the Conservative Party, I was told, oh, Sikhs are normally Labour actually, why are you joining another party? You often get people that don't look at the SNP or Lib Dems, whichever party it is. If we put all eggs in one basket, you're not going to be representative. The reality is you've got to engage with whoever's in government and you've got to engage with all of the parties. And I think just looking around Parliament and seeing how underrepresented we are, I'd ask everyone a question. If you look at the percentage of this country and of the USA that is Jewish, and then look at the percentage of the people working in the White House and senior levels of government in America and working in senior levels of Parliament and government here, and do a comparison and compare it with where we are much bigger as a community, but so underrepresented because we don't understand how the system works. So I disagree with your point about not engaging with the system because I don't think you're going to be able to reinvent it. The reality is I just think we're really bad at it, and we have been bad historically because, as Indrajit said, we don't have those institutions, and I applaud Sikh PA for doing this and pulling the people together that you have done. I think you've done a fantastic job. You've got a very good panel there, and more of this kind of discussion and debate is needed. We shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed to disagree with each other, as you were saying, because that is healthy, and it shows we do have different opinions, but all of you are here because you're presumably interested in politics, but I don't know how many of you are members of the party or how many of you are engaged, but do engage with, and I know you're not a big fan of UKIP, but I'm not either, but whatever party it is, engage, and that's the only way you're actually going to change the system. Otherwise, we're just the angry people outside the window yelling on the inside, trying to be heard. You're not around the table, and that's the problem. Yeah. The tables where the decisions are made. If you're standing outside the window yelling, other people outside the window may hear you, but the decisions are made, the papers are signed around the table. And I just don't see how you influence the system if you're not there personally. People have different approaches and want to try and reinvent the system. But this system's been around for a long time. I don't see it changing personally.
Yeah, I know it's been around for a long time, and a lot of the reasons that it has been around for a long time is because it's actively excluded us and tried to erase us from existence. And you talk about the Jewish community and the parallels often made. The big difference between the Jewish community and the Sikh community is that we're brown and they're white, so we're not viewed as human beings first, let alone getting involved in the system, right?
If you want a conversation, a conversation can happen outside.
The solution, as far as I'm concerned, is that this isn't the only form of politics. If this isn't just Sikh politics, it isn't just about political parties, about the Tories, about being a lord or whatever. Sikh politics is about Sikhi. It comes from a position of absolute sovereignty. This is a European politics, party politics, as has been made very, very clear. That isn't only politics, though. See, this is the issue. You guys are confusing European British politics with politics. There's a very big difference. And Sikhs have their own notion, right? Bro, you'll learn, man. Like, apna jeevan banao Sikh lo innit.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
We're going to take 3 more questions max. I think Baji here has something to say. Good point, BG. Thank you. So let's see who's got their hand up. Just one more thing. This question did start about Jagtar Singh Johal, and today is his 200th day being detained. There's currently a social media awareness campaign going on, so anyone that can contribute simply by hashtagging Free Jaggi now, that helps keep the situation in the public sphere, which helps us bring it up as an issue to the media. And just 3 more questions because we're getting close to 9 o'clock, unless you guys want to stay. So, just let me know. But Kal Singh, firstly. Baji here?
VG here.
Okay, all right.
You talk about lack of engagement and getting more Sikhs into politics, but for a young professional like myself who maybe doesn't have the knowledge or the resource or even the people to go to discuss that with, don't you think there should be some sort of mentoring system or something in place? And because some of you have been in politics for a long time, shouldn't that have been implemented a long time ago? Then we would have made the movements that, for example, Canada you mentioned have already made. So how do you intend to put a mentoring system in place if you are intending to?
Well, you're absolutely right. I was very lucky, but I know a lot of women didn't stand for that same reason that you didn't. I also volunteer for an organisation called Sikh Women's Action Network, and I have went to a meeting today, and they do want to do some nationwide events about engaging women into politics and providing a support mechanism. So I'd love to talk to you about that after this is done. I'll give you my contact details. If you're interested, we're here to help and support.
We've got another question. Last one.
Someone different, please. Sorry.
Wait, your question still stands about grooming.
Yeah, I just wanted to reframe it slightly, if that was all right, very quickly.
No, sorry, we're going to have to, as many people as possible. I don't want to leave people out. So
Does some-
has been hand up several times. Guys, we'd like to bear that in mind, as many people as possible. Yeah?
Thanks, Baji. My name's Angad Singh. I was just wondering, there's a lot of talk often, and I've seen this on various Sikh organisations' websites and in the media a lot, about how as Sikhs we've got a long and proud tradition with the British, despite the fact that they colonised the next Punjab, and about how we fought for them in the world wars, and about how we're well integrated. There's definitely a model minority myth. Do you find that we do enough as a community to prevent ourselves being used as a prop with which to beat other minorities? There are so many Sikhs that talk about other immigrants that don't work hard, but actually, like, even going far back to colonial times, the jobs that we got as a result of British eugenics, because we're a martial race, that meant we're more likely to get brought over to work, that meant we're more likely to have a financial basis, that means we can have the opportunities. So do you think we're doing enough as a community to stand with anti-racist and decolonial activism that's going on?
That's a very good question. I slightly will digress by answering it this way. I chair something called the National Memorial Gates Council in the House of Lords. It has all the great and the good in terms of who served the Empire and the Commonwealth during World War I and II. Her Majesty the Queen opened and inaugurated our memorial, which is basically a stone throw away from Buckingham Palace on Constitution Hill. And what I would say to you is this, is that our forefathers fought, for whatever reason, under the British banner, as part of the British Army. They weren't treated equally. I, as a chair, make a point of that. I think Jai Singh Sohal has been to my event. Avtar Singh is sitting at the back. He's a member of my council at the back. He can vouch for this. As the sole two Sikhs on that, we're not there as a Sikhs. We happen to be in positions of authority and so on and so forth that were picked. So there are some distinguished people like Viscount Slim, Sir John Chappell, he was a field marshal, Evelyn Webb Carter, he was a major general. These are bigwigs of the British Army who sit alongside me on that council. And I need their support to get an idea. It's what others were saying about, Lord Singh has said, is that you only break down barriers when you sit alongside people. Okay? Now, we don't forget the colonial elements of this. We know the barbarity that our community faced. We also mustn't forget the Dogras in 1857. Had it not been for the Dogras, we will still have our kingdom today. Yeah? So,
Actually focusing on the past, I was talking about current activism to try and promote social equality, to try and break down financial and racialized barriers. I'm asking, as a community now, rather than simply canonizing our relationship with the British, is there a way to say we are not your model minority with which to beat new European and supposedly third world migrants? Are we actually doing enough there? Because I understand what you're saying about recognizing positive contributions, but it's not actually strictly relevant to the Windrush generation, the asylum seekers who are LGBTQ that are being deported back to Commonwealth countries. And I don't see as a community that we stand with anti-black activists, anti-Islamophobic activists, or queer activists nearly enough. Where's the solidarity if we want their support in our campaign?
solidarity is this, that what I was going to go and finish by a sentence with, I'm conscious of the time, is that the memorial we have is across the Caribbean and African communities. It's not a standalone thing. Yeah? There's a danger. We are being pushed down the path where we have to stand with our own identity, build our own memorials, and so on and so forth. We're breaking up from that common Sarbat Dapala, if that's what you're getting on to. But we have a common alliance against those injustices across the piece.
Thank you for that.
So I can only talk on an... Okay, sorry.
Just 10-second comment. Literally 10
seconds just to correct and clarify the earlier point you made. Sikhs fought alongside Hindus and Muslims, as well as with Christians in the Punjabi regiments. So before we start thinking about, oh, these are the British using the Sikhs in a particular way, let's also talk about the fact that they were people of different faiths fighting side by side.
You're justifying colonial exploitation of raising Sikh military and saying that we fought of our own free will.
We'll have that discussion after the...
Jas has just asked me to very quickly respond to the very valid point that you made over there about it's all good and well saying how do we get involved if there are no mentors or no pathways or schemes to do so. Shamsher is very articulate, but we're going to disagree on one thing, which is that I don't think Jewish are successful just because they're white and we're held back just because we're brown. I don't agree. I think the problem is they see people who are young, the people who are talented, they invest in them. We don't do that. But what I would say practically and cheaply, contact your MP, contact your local party once you've established who they are. They're always taking people for work experience. We take people for work experience and you learn the ropes, you see how it works, build your networks and contacts, and it makes a massive difference. Thank you.
Thank you. That's just in regards to mentorship, which Panji asked about. We'll do one more question from somebody we haven't heard about, and then we'll call it.
I think we have enough questions asked. Let's go to the panelists. Devinderjeet Singh, do you want to comment on some stuff?
I think just summing up what we've heard, I think if you want to take something away from today is be proud to be a Sikh on what that means. Be true to your guru. And the reason why I'm saying this is your party is actually the Khalsa Panth, because that's what the Guru's taught us. But when we engage, we take our Sikhi and we engage with the sort of political system in this country, which is primarily what we're talking about, you know, let's cut to the chase. We won't have definitely any more MEPs. We had one, and they're a thing of the past. I would not say next time round, you know, we may have one or two more Sikh MPs, but that will probably be it for a while. So we need to engage with the entire system and all politicians to push our issues, but let the guide should be our Sikhi and our Khalsa traditions. And that's why be proud of your identity, push that, because actually people will respect you for it.
Thank you. I agree with much of what Devinderjeet has said. We are Sikhs, and we should remember we can do a lot in all walks of life. I mean, human rights is fundamental to Sikhs, pressing for human rights. Tomorrow I'm speaking on television about human rights in Iran. We should not distinguish. We should look at Sarbat Ka Pala, looking to the well-being of all humanity. The more we do that, the more we'll be recognized. If we go bleating about that no one knows who we are, then we're in difficulties. We can show what we are and who we are by the way we behave and the way we act. Thank you.
So I'd sum up in two phrases, really. Firstly, get involved. Whatever the party is, whatever system it is, get involved, do something, because we all have a duty to get involved and do something. If you're interested in the Conservative Party, come chat with myself. You've got Jay Parji and Narendra Parji in the room as well, so come chat with any of us. You know, we'll put you in the contact with the right people. And the other thing is, be respectful. Even just in the last, what has it been, 2 hours, this debate, the amount of comments that have been, you know, build your Jeevan or you're not a Sikh, I'm sorry, that does not have a place in this room. Get it out of your head, get it out of your language. Let's be respectful, because until we're respectful amongst ourselves, we're never going to move forward in the UK political system.
What she said, and if you want to join the Labour Party, speak to me afterwards. No, seriously, I joined the Labour Party because at 17 I was diagnosed with cancer, and throughout the last 10 years I'm alive and have 2 kids because of a fantastic system, and I'm proud of that. And I became an activist predominantly because of that, because it's a service that benefits anyone and not just Sikhs. My spirituality informs the kind of politician that I will be. Don't ever be afraid to care for things and fight for things and want to be involved in things, and don't let any man especially tell you that you can't do it. And I'm talking mainly to my sisters here, yeah, because again, you hardly asked any questions. I wish you guys had asked more. Come and grab me afterwards, or Simrat Benji if you want to talk afterwards. Don't let any man try and pull you down, or don't let any man or woman try and tell you that you can't do something. And if you need support, there are networks here. Let's build those networks. If they're not in place, like you said, Benji, we build them, because that's what we do. If it's not there, we build it. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I think this has been a healthy conversation this evening, if I may say so. There's been some... the turbans are very much intact. An honour too, I hope. I think the person that asked the question, Benji, at the back, it's sad that we had to ask is there any woman in the house who wants to ask a question? Because we, as men, sort of occupy that space very easily. It happens in our Gurdwara committees. We have the notional, women represented, but we don't have them in the leadership roles. I think it starts from home, really, all of this stuff. We need to walk the talk as a community. We need to get real. We're not going to get anything presented to us on a plate. That's for sure. We have to fight for what we deserve as a community. The word that Narinder mentioned around the percentage of people, number, I don't want to compare ourselves with the Jewish or the Muslim or, whatever community in this country. I want to compare us with ourselves. What is our critical mass that we have in our communities? We've got great wealth as a community across the country. That's what we're applauded for. We're told in number of publications that we're law-abiding citizens and so on and so forth. But what do we get in return for that as a community? Have we ever asked us that question? Are we just looking for grants for organizations that don't represent us? Is that what it's about? I think we need to question more, be critical friends of our organizations, which I am. I'll say it the way it is. And people may not like it, but it has to be said. If I don't say it, who else will? It starts with I. So let's get out there, become members of whichever party that you fancy, join it and become active. It starts with membership, and only then you get up the ladder. And I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to call it as that. I feel this is one of the few events which has probably left everyone with even more questions rather than answers, but I think that's to be expected with politics. So please do feel free to approach people and discuss anything that you want with any of the individuals outside. We're going to start clearing this room now. Once again, I thank everyone for coming. Please do bear in mind, like I said, this event cost us over £400. We are still looking for contributions to ensure that we can not only hold events like this again, but also just continue the work that the Sikh Press Association do. I hope you did find this useful in some form. Again, thanks all for coming. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.